My earliest memories were those of visits to Turf Moor with my father. He was a big Burnley fan, although played himself, refereed himself, but not in the professional levels. But he actually brought me over, and it was his devotion to Burnley that kept me on track. We'd left Lancashire very early at an age, I think I was only 3, to live across in Cheshire, because that was in the midst of the cities and Uniteds and that sort of thing. But his love, his devotion to Burnley resulted in us driving over, and of course there was no motorway then, and obviously there was but we took that trek through Manchester, Prestwich, across to Ramsbottom, and into Burnley that way, and it was worth it, because not only did we watch them, but we visited all the family as well. So I wasn't always sure what I was watching. Sometimes I'd sit on a little box he'd made me, which got me some elevation on the terrace. But I took it all for granted. There we were, big crowds then. And I can't remember all the facts, but I always remembered he argued with everybody. And I'm grateful to him for giving me that, because it always makes for interesting conversations. But stood on this box, watching from the long side all these fans coming at the be-all end in the scarves, because it was not segregated, it was no seating. So, I remember Newcastle, Everton, Manchester United, waves of these scarves. Everyone wore a scarf and a bobble hat. So, I do remember those moments, and those were great times. I don't think Burnley were quite a formidable home side, as I remember. Anyway, I recall, first of all, the World Cup final, and that was my first introduction to, a major. I remember watching the teleprinter. For those who don't, a little bobbing up and down, which printed the results on a Saturday. And as I grew up and played a bit of football myself, my mother was always told to remember the scores, and of course she always got them wrong. They were never. So we were a football family. We were Burnley devoted, and again I thank my father for that. 1967, there were some European games, Burnley versus Napoli, Lucerne Sports, Stuttgart, and of course if I'd have told that story to anyone later, they'd have said, unbelievable, you're making it up. Well, Burnley played in those European games and fared quite well. 68-ish, the Football League Cup, Burnley had progressed through to the semi-finals and went to a couple of replays, and I was obviously in bed. Dad said, I'll come up, I'll let you know how they've gone on. It was worse than Christmas night waiting to find out, because I'd never been to Wembley Stadium, and he promised me. But of course we got beat in that second replay and didn't make Wembley, so that was a very, very bitter disappointment. And that was the famous Don Rodgers' Swindon, who went on and actually beat Arsenal in the final. Unbelievable. But I played a bit of football myself, so didn't join in the Saturday to Saturday consecutively till the sort of 80s, mid-80s. But I remember then the final, the playoff final against Stockport, and I was actually living and working in that particular area, and it was a huge joke, because Stockport were trying to play down the fact that they couldn't sell the tickets for the final. Turf morons was one headline in the Manchester Evening News, and Stockport fans are frightened of the Burnley fans, and the fact is they just didn't have enough support to support them, and on the other hand, Burnley was selling tickets like mad, and we travelled down, and we beat them that day. I was actually friends of someone who was supplying a psychologist to Stockport, who was supposed to have motivated them, but in fact what happened, he sort of provoked them into this aggressive play, and 2 players were sent off, which helped our cause. So that was the second Wembley. I should have recalled that we went after the Leyton Orient game, and not in order, but the Leyton Orient game was followed immediately by this Leyland DAF final. And I remember that I had this T-shirt which told of our victims, and I think it read Bury, Southport, Rochdale. Well, if you pulled them in a competition, you'd certainly go straight there, wouldn't you? And of course we did, losing to a Wolverhampton team in the final.